All right, so these are all pretty much, when I say contract questions, there's a few things that are just informative too. The first one, this actually happened to one of our agents, so I thought it was a good example. We had the buyer and our agent wrote an offer for $40,000 over the asking price. And the seller counted back that they would accept our offer if we would remove the inspection contingency. And they would provide us with the previous inspector's inspection report. So here's a couple problems with that. First, by using someone else's inspection report, you can't go after the inspector then. Does that make sense? Because you didn't pay for it. So you have no recourse on the inspector because your buyer didn't pay for it. But what they said is they give our buyer 3 hours to review that inspection report and get back to us. So do you know what other form you would need if you waived the building inspection? Anytime you use a special sale contract or you're waiving a building inspection, do you know what you need to, what else do you need to have signed?
Isn't there a new form that we just started using?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember.
So what the problem is, nobody can find it. So you might want to write it down, and it's called the buyer's inspection authorization form. That's what it says at the top of the form. And the top of the form is saying, it's the buyer giving you, the agent, authorization to order different inspections. But at the bottom of the form, it says buyer's been made aware that you've told them to get an inspection, but they're waiving it. So if there would happen to be a lawsuit, we have it in writing that you've recommended that they have an inspection.
Okay.
So in this case, 3 hours and 2 minutes, so that they gave our buyer 3 hours to look at the inspection and get back to them. And it was 3 hours and 2 minutes later, the listing agent's calling and saying, hey, we've accepted another offer. Can they do that?
If we don't have anything in writing, they can.
Right, they were 2 minutes too late. When it got to be 3 hours and 2 minutes, the offer was expired. So you got to really pay attention to that kind of thing. I really don't want our agents using someone else's building inspection. That's my big message to you today, is that's really dangerous to do. No recourse, just remember that if you use it.
So
okay.
When you say you've got recourse with the inspector, what does that mean?
Well, let's say they missed something really they should have caught. You know, it happened in that case. Usually the buyer gets an attorney and the attorney goes after everybody involved. Usually that's what happens.
Okay.
If they can find that the building inspector was negligent and didn't find something that should have been on their checklist, they'll be sued also.
Okay. I heard something the other day that somebody was saying that when there are things that the agent should have been aware of because they're doing their market research or whatnot, they can be held liable if they don't disclose, say that a house was built on a sinkhole. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of that happening?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Are you supposed to go and check somewhere? Because apparently
no, but if they said, here's an example. Hey, Lisa, the basement leaked last month, but that was the first time it leaked, and I think I fixed it. So I'm not gonna put on there. Now they've told you it leaked.
Right.
And guess what happens when they get sued? They tell their lawyer, well, I told Lisa.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that, I mean, sometimes you can get sued and you didn't know about it, but if you do know, you have to own up to it, and And if they don't want to disclose it, then you should just say, have a nice life. You should list with someone else. Yeah. That's hard to do, but it's worth not getting involved in that.
Right.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next. This is actually a situation that happened. One of our agent's friends is moving, and her company is giving her relocation benefits. And it's very expensive when they do that. So the relocation company is requiring 42.5% of the commission. So she's listing their home. And so I want to make you aware, when you accept relocation, I have to sign it also, but it can range anywhere from 38 to 42.5% for a relocation fee. What you can really hope for is that you can get some sort of residual business by having your sign out there. But here's an example of how that would work. If the property sold for $150,000 on the list side and you got 3%, they would, that's $4,500 at 42.5%, they get $1,912. So just so you know, that fee that from a relocation company, it comes off the top of the commission.
So then the 1900s, what's left to split?
So you would receive the balance, which is 2587, and then you would get your split from there.
Yeah, okay.
So
And honestly, there's not a lot of relocation going on right now. Most companies have figured out they don't have to. They don't have to pay for an employee to move. They can leave them where they're living and do it remotely.
So I've seen these listings and it says relocation. Is that the reason every time this is
right? Here's the reason, because the seller can do a verbal acceptance, but they can't do a written acceptance until the relocation company approves it. And every relocation company is different, but that's kind of standard. That's why you'll see, James, it'll say Monday through Friday. They're kind of a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 company. So if you submit an offer and you want a response on Saturday, you might get a verbal acceptance, but you're not going to get a written acceptance until Monday, probably in the afternoon.
But why is the seller using a relocation company and not just
because a lot of the relocation companies will pay the commission. They're paying for their employee. In this case, this particular person's moving to California, so they're paying her moving expenses. So they're going to try to get it from us, that 42.5%.
I see. So the seller's not paying any commission. The company is
No, in this case, she's not.
Okay.
Nope.
Good to know.
Okay, so this was something when I was out in Vegas, and I thought it was worth talking about. If you have a financial advisor, a lot of financial advisors, they used to be stockbrokers, if you remember that term, and now they're called your advisor. So I thought this was worth talking about, and you ought to look at what your current title is as a realtor. But I like this one. It says your trusted real estate advisor. So just take a few minutes and look at your title. It's okay to say you're a realtor, but the real estate advisor just sounds more professional, in my opinion. Okay, so this actually happened this week, I think Monday, maybe last week. You represent the seller, and you get there and they say, so I will pay you to list my house, but I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. Can they do that?
Sure.
Yeah, they could say, hey, James, I'll pay you 3% to list my house, but I am not going to pay that buyer's agent. But the MLS kind of overrules that, in that we have to put something in for a buyer's agent. But that amount could be $500 or something like that. That's why it's really important that when you have your buyer's consultation and you're getting your buyer's agency signed, that you fill in an amount that's worth your while to go out and show houses. So you would have to, one of the fields, either sub-agent, buyer's agent, or transaction broker. And I would prefer you put it under the buyer's agent. If you offer a transaction broker a commission, you will be doing all the work. And we don't want a sub-agent under us. If they don't work for us, I really don't want them having an agency under us. So under that buyer's agency, you could put 1% or you could put a dollar amount. But that's something that's regulated by MLS. Okay. Okay, so under number 5, you represent the buyer, and the buyer calls you and says, hey, I want to see this house. I saw it for sale by owner sign. What's the first thing you have to do?
We tell them you can't show it to them because it's not on the MLS, and
Right.
you have to have their permission to see it.
Right, so you would call the seller and ask them if they'll cooperate with you, meaning, will they pay you? Sometimes you can convince them to let you list the house too, but in this market, it's a little difficult to do that. But what we're wanting them to do is to agree to pay us a commission. So the form that you would need to do that is an authorization to show. You would never show up without having that document signed when you bring your buyer there. Because you can't show something, you're not supposed to do that unless you have a document signed. And also what I would do on that form, it asks what those buyers' names are. I would put in clients of James Alott, clients of Lisa Blaine. I would never put their name on that document, because the way social media is today, that seller could find them very easily and work out a deal and leave you out. So you want to do an authorization to show. Make sure you're using a current valid form when you do that. And if you're not using valid forms, then the MRAC happens to audit that file. That means that, or if there's an E&O claim, it's not covered. So always make sure that you're getting your forms out of either DocuSign or Forms or Us. Okay. That happens, I think, sometimes when agents from other companies send us things and they're using forms out of a drawer instead of getting them online. Okay, so we just talked about this. Beginning February 15th, we started requiring what 2 forms that in the past you didn't have to submit. One or the other. It's the inspection notice or the buyer's inspection authorization form. So make sure that you do one of those 2 things. And that means even on a special sale contract, because why? Special sale contract takes all the inspections out. That contract has no provision for an inspection. Okay. Any questions? All right, so here's the next thing. You got a phone call and they called and they said, hey, we want you to come over and list our house. And first thing you should always do is print the tax record. And why is that? Because we need to know the parties that are involved. And 90% of the time, the tax records are accurate. They're not always. But anytime you look at in this particular one, right after their name, Lexi highlighted it for you. Do you see the TE in parentheses there, that means that that property is in a trust.
Mm.
So before you go, you could pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I just noticed that your home is in a trust. I don't need the entire document, but I need the page that has the name of the trust on it. And one of the reasons why is because we need to know how they need to sign the documents for the listing agreement. And that also works when you're working with the buyer that's buying it in a trust. So we've included a page here. Lexi will send this out to you later, maybe tomorrow, but getting the signatures right when you have a buyer or seller. And we have it listed here on how they would sign. So, and here's something else to remember. Anytime they're signing as a POA, power of attorney, if the person they're signing for passes away, so does the POA. The POA is gone too.
I didn't know that.
So we have all this in writing, and we'll send that to you so you can keep that in your folder to refer back to. But sometimes what happens, we don't catch that until the very end, and then we have to go back and do an amendment and have it all changed for the all pertaining documents to that transaction because it wasn't signed correctly.
I was gonna say with a trust, you also have to get everybody in the trust to sign it. And normally.
Well, somebody might be the trustee for the trust, and one person might be able to sign for that. Lexi can talk to you about that.
So also what Joan has explained to me is that as long as we have that page of the trust and not indentures, but the certificate that says who is eligible to sign as what. So these people are able to sign for Rose Smith because Rose Smith is unable to sign for herself. And there's a list of 3 people that can be their signees or trustees or whatever. So one of those 3 people can sign it. We don't need all 3, just as long as it shows that that person who did sign it does have that ability,
Yeah.
yes, to do so.
And sometimes when they're complicated, I will pick up the phone and call the title company and ask them. I'll send that piece of paper, that document over to them and have them look it up because they have access to recorded information that we don't. Hold on one second. Hey, I'm doing my class. Can I call you back? Oh, okay. Okay, bye. All right. So here's the next thing. This is important too. So you represent the buyer, and during the inspection notice, the buyer and seller agreed to change the closing date. That's during the inspection. So in other words, our contract's accepted, everything's done, but the seller doesn't want to make some requested repairs. And so they say, we'll give you a credit in lieu of repairs. So what document would you need to do that? Those 2 things.
An amendment?
An amendment.
That's right. Yes. So the amendment would be to change the closing date, which we have to give that to the lender. But we're also, the seller's giving the buyer a credit in lieu of repairs. And we can't let the lender know that that's what we're doing. So we have to do, the words you would use would be the same that are on the sales contract, meaning the seller agrees to pay at closing towards buyer's closing cost prepaid points. So if you just refer to lines 70 and 71 of the sale contract, in case you forget the words you need to use, just refer to that. But you cannot put seller is crediting buyer $5,000 in lieu of repairs. The lenders won't allow that, generally will not. Okay. Okay, so you have a buyer and they want to build, they want to put an offer in on new construction. Generally speaking, all builders have their own contract. So what would be one thing that's not included in their contract that we have to have for the Missouri Real Estate Commission?
It's gonna be like a seller's disclosures or?
Well, because it's new construction, they probably won't do that. But you would need the relationship disclosure addendum, because that identifies what agency you're working for your buyer. A lot of times the builder will not sign that on their side of the document. But what we want you to do is to send it to them anyway, have them respond where they say refuse to sign or something, and we'll put that in your file in case it is, if KCMREC would audit that file, we covered our basis. But for you, you have to do that for your buyer.
What about the lead form? Would you still need it in case it was built on some piece of land that had?
Oh, I would definitely do that. You could request it. I think that's a really good point, James. Another thing I would do, I would have the house inspected. And a lot of people don't do that. And I'll give you another example. You always want to have a survey done when you have new construction. I had an agent that her buyer purchased a property out in St. Charles, and it was a big development, and they were like the 50th house that was in there. They did a survey because they were going to put a fence up, and guess what? Every single house in there was built on someone else's, on the neighbor's lot. So it all had to be the surveys all had to be redone, and a new plat had to be generated. So yeah, and you know what, you want to, the title company, they get a better deal on surveys than what our client would get if they called a surveyor. They get a discount. So, and it's always better to get it done beforehand. You don't want your buyer moving in and having issues with the next door neighbor. That's just a bad way to start out. And oftentimes, and I know, James, you've done a lot of business in the city, you know that a lot of times there's encroachments and things like that on property in the city. Okay. But one other thing I just want to mention about a builder's contract, it is very different than our contract. The builder's contract protects the builder. I feel like our St. Louis Association of Realtor contract really gives our buyers a lot of ways to get out of it. A builder contract does not. Most of them give them 30 days for financing, even if they haven't even started to build. So what happens if it takes 9 or 10 months to build the house, and 5 months into it, you lose your job? They don't care. It's too late. So just if you have a buyer, what I would do is call the builder in advance, or the manning agent, and ask for a copy of the contract before you take your client there to write the offer. Most of the time, the manning agent is going to write the offer, and you should be present when that happens. Because it's your job. And the agent a lot of times doesn't want you to be there, but you're making a commission. That's your due diligence to protect them. If that happens and you're confused about it, feel free to call me. I'll be happy to go over it, but their contracts are very different. Okay, number 10, you represent a tenant and you write the lease and it's accepted and the tenant moves in the very next day. When will you get paid? James, have you done a lease?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of leases. You'll get what? So you're representing the tenant?
Yes.
You get paid when they decide they want to pay you. And I've had a case where I had to keep picking up the phone and giving some fire and fury before they would send the check to you guys. And then
this was an issue Lexi had asked me to talk about, because agents get frustrated about it. But here's the thing. it's not where we're going to a title company and they're collecting the money. It's a tenant. And so now the listing agent has to send the landlord an invoice basically and collect the commission. The commission has to go to the listing broker, and it's a form of a personal check. So the listing company is going to keep it for 10 business days to make sure it clears before they pay us. And so that we just don't want you getting upset or mad. It could take 30 days before you get paid, depending on how long it takes for the listing agent to collect the money from the landlord and then get the money to the bank, and 10 business days and how that all falls. So just want you to be aware that don't get upset if you don't get paid right away. And you know, James, you've been there, I'm
So
sure.
the way, if I'm representing someone's rental, I get the tenant to write the check for the commission directly to Remax, and that speeds it up for everybody, if you know what I mean. So
If the tenant's going to pay it, but
correct.
usually the landlord's paying the brokerage, the listing brokerage. So that's where the timing comes into play.
Correct. But if you're representing the tenant and you've got the listing, you get the tenant to write the portion that is your commission directly to Remax, and then the rest of the deposit to the landlord.
Yeah,
That way you're
it
not
might
waiting,
speed it up. Yeah.
that way
That's
you're
a
waiting
good-
for the landlord to, the checks in the mail, blah, blah, blah. It just speeds
Right,
up.
and it's not.
Right.
Yeah. When I was in Vegas, I attended the Brian Buffini seminar, and I thought these were two really great letters that you might want to try to use. And that is actually an actual Post-it note on that first one there, that you might have a buyer for their property. And then the second letter is something, and if it were me, I wouldn't be taking this and copying it. I would take it and redo it and put it in my own words, but I like what it says. So the first one has to do with, I may have a buyer for your property. And the second one is, hey, congratulations on your investment. You've looked it up, you know that you can look in tax records, right? You can figure out, or you can do a CMA and figure out what their home is worth versus what they paid for it. So I think it's a nice way to send out some letters. Now it takes a little work, but think about it. If you did 5 of these a week, what could happen? It could generate some nice business for you.
So I get 3 of these a week. I have some places in California, and I put them straight in the bin. So I literally get 3 a week.
For the buyer,
People trying to buy my places, I get probably 5 phone calls a week and 3 of these letters a week, different letters like this.
what about the congrats on your investment?
I give every different way you can imagine. I've got a buyer for your house. What a great investment. Are you thinking of selling? We want to buy your house for cash. They're handwritten. They've got post notes. They've got every.
That's why you got to do an X amount, because you know what? One day they might get you at the right date and right time, and they go, you know what? I'm going to call that guy and see what kind of buyer they have.
Yeah.
You have to do so many. That's for sure. You're not going to send out one and get a hit. It doesn't work like that. Okay, the next thing, I'm sure you saw this when you logged into Maris. You saw that there's been some changes made. So Lexi highlighted that for you as well. It falls under the category of withheld status. And what in the past, if Lisa, you had a listing and you were talking to an agent at Coldwell Banker and you knew that they had a buyer for it, you would be able to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I just got this listing. I wanted to let you know about it. Now they've changed it. You cannot do that. And they've also removed the communicating to an agent outside of your brokerage. So we're only allowed to promote our listings within our own organization. And Lexi and I are working on something right now that we think will help in promoting our own listings and buyer needs, and we'll be getting that out to you soon. But make sure that you're using the current form if you get a listing and it's dated at the bottom, February 2 of 2022. You have any questions about that? They keep changing this, this Maris form. It's actually getting ridiculous, and I understand everyone's getting frustrated with it, but I'm going to show you something that I got when I was in Vegas. I thought you might be interested in this. Let me see if I can do this right. Let's see, camera. Can you see that?
Car coaster.
So it goes in the cup and it has the agent's name, and it's kind of like coasters at home, you know, it's absorbing. And I looked it up. They're like $1. They're kind of a neat thing to hang, something different, you know, than whatever.
Definitely something different than you get handed to you
Yep.
Right.
usually.
Okay, did you guys have anything you want to talk about?
So I have these buyers and they keep getting outbid, you know, and I ran it past Randy. Do you think that they're better off holding off until May, or do you think this is just the way it's going to be continually?
Well, I'll tell you a couple little things that I've learned over the last month. I don't like waiving building inspections. I'm very concerned at some point that's going to fall back on us. But one of the things that you could write in under special agreements would be, we're going to have an inspection, but Mr. Seller, we're not going to ask you for anything unless unless an item is over X amount, meaning that amount's $5,000, which would be an HVAC system, a roof, a structural issue. So you might try that. I just talked to Mike Leaker. He got a deal this week. It was listed at $325. They went $40,000 over asking price. No inspections, waived the appraisal writer and waived financing. But when you do that, you better make damn sure that the lender is pre-qualified your folks, because they don't have an out at that point.
So I've explained to them that they've got some room if the appraisal doesn't come in to a certain amount, but not to that level. And the one that just came through that they lost was a 200 listed at 292 and it sold for 330. So they, they just.
I would suggest too that when you're in that situation to write up a backup offer, because some people have buyer's remorse. And they might the next day go, you know what, we paid way too much, and start getting that like sick feeling. And maybe yours is the next position that you could get your offer accepted as a backup.
If you write up a backup offer, they can't offer on anything else, can they? Say you write a backup offer and a week later they've written up an offer on something else, and then the backup, are you not like in a.
If they accept your backup offer, James, you want to find out what backup offer you're in. Are you in position number 1 or 2 or 3? Because they might accept 2 or 3 others, but they're supposed to inform you what position you're in the backup.
Okay, but if you had a backup offer and 10 days later you were in contract on something else and they said, okay, your backup offer is.
Oh, you can get out. You can get out at any time, but you have to get out before they call you and tell you your offer is accepted.
Okay. So you'd say I got an offer accepted on something else. We're canceling the backup offer.
The other thing I would do is say earnest money will be deposited once I become the primary offer. Once my buyer becomes the primary position, then the earnest money will be deposited. But I wouldn't be tying up their money until you find out, it could be several weeks.
So there's no form you need to cancel the backup offer. You literally say, I've written up another offer on something that's accepted, we're out.
Right. I would call and I'd send it over in writing that they're walking.
Okay. Because one of the offers we got, they were number 2 and they wanted a backup offer. And I was kind of wary. I think one of these conferences you said basically the backup offer rarely gets accepted, and and the seller is using it as leverage to.
Oh, they can't keep the first one in place, but occasionally that's what happens. The first person gets the buyer's remorse and decides to walk.
We got one accepted in January, I think, in Washington.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are a couple things that you can use. If your buyer is saying I can go up to 300, you probably should be looking at property 225 to 250.
Well, that's kind of where it's kind of that, and we nearly. So something happened where we were the runner up, and they actually came back to us, and I put in a second offer, but then the primary people managed to figure out their financing, and that just.
There's a couple other options, things like letting the seller stay there longer, closing, because the sellers are worried about, where am I going to move to if I sell my house? Where am I going to move to? So if we say, we'll go ahead and close March 1st, and we'll give you until April 1st to move out, and don't charge them rent. But you better make sure that those sellers are, like, when you're showing the property, they're taking good care of it. They're
So I think that when I write up the offer, I'll put in like a personal note saying they're very flexible and they're minimal fuss.
Yeah, I have to tell you about personal notes. You got to be very careful. And clearly do not get involved in crafting the letter. But legally, from the National Association of Realtors, they don't want us doing that any longer, because there's been too many situations of discrimination. And, before it was the white straight couple with 2 little kids and the dog. And then there was an African-American couple who maybe offered more and they didn't get it. And guess what? That is bad news, because that clearly looks like discrimination. So we have to be very careful.
Well, so the notes I'm putting in, it's not really like a love letter. It's more of they're easy to deal with, and they're very flexible on when you need to move out.
Okay.
And that is, it's more of the, hey, we're easy to deal with, and we can take care of the logistics, rather than they're, he's an ex-rock star and she's a teacher and they've got 2 beautiful children. So it's more of that kind of like, and I always pick up the phone and call these people, but you can't get anyone to answer a phone call anymore. They text you, call them straight back, and then they text you back, hey, I'm in a meeting with a client. I can't talk. Like, nobody wants to pick up a phone, which is drives me nuts.
Well, that's why these letters, this is why we'd like to generate some of our own listings, right? So we can ask that. Interest rates did increase to a little over 4% on a 30-year fixed. So I think that's and now we've got gas prices increasing too, right? So I remember the last time we had this big inflation on gasoline, and it would cost me $90 to fill my gas tank. And I would drive by a restaurant at lunchtime and it would be empty because people weren't eating out lunch anymore. So I think that will also have an effect on our housing market. It could. If we end up in a war, it will. We don't have
my gas already has doubled in price.
So we don't have that crystal ball to figure all that out, but anything else, James or Lisa?
I'm good.
Yeah, we'll have a safe trip to Florida.
Yes, enjoy.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do.
Get your kids some earphones, some ear things to put on so they can watch some movies on the way.
Yeah, we'll see. You don't think spotting license plates is going to keep them occupied?
No,
that keeps me occupied.
Yeah, you got to find the Hawaii one. You can only talk.
Wait a minute, that's an adult game. Your 2-year-old's not going to be in for that.
He likes looking for he calls them noisy cars. When we go downtown, he sees a Dodge Charger. He says noisy car. So he's into spotting cars.
Likes the race cars.
I saw Dale back there in the back. He never checked in.
Yeah, he's waving now.
Hi Dale.
I did have a question, Lynn.
Yeah.
I have a potential buyer that wants me to help him find some commercial property. Yeah, I don't know anything about commercial property.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. I'll give you, you have a pen and paper there?
I do.
One of our agents' names is Rob Frisilla, Frisella. And I'll give you his number
Okay.
because he has access to commercial listings that we
Oh,
don't. Some
okay.
commercial listings might be in the MLS, but not all.
Okay.
All right, so 314-503-7567.
Okay.
I think we're gonna see a lot more commercial properties come on the market because I'm hearing more and more people are working from home.
Yeah.
Companies have discovered, you know what, they can do it from home. And I don't have to pay rent and utilities and all this other stuff and save money.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, and companies are putting cameras on their computers and they can tell by the keystroke and all that other stuff, so.
We got a lot here in Chesterfield.
Oh,
I feel like.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
There'll
yeah,
probably
very-
be some conversion too of commercial property being converted into residential property.
We have a
Condos
place.
and things.
We have a place in the Cortex where, because I have a full-time job during the day. But they actually rent lab benches to startup companies, like startup pharmaceutical companies. And so like they have this whole building and they're just renting actual lab benches and their lab equipment for people to use.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really cool idea.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. A lot of space for it, might as well.
Right. Right.
well, like Chesterfield Mall, it's basically
Oh.
Macy's and they're a separate building,
Yeah.
but they're talking about tearing it down or converting it into condominiums or partial commercial, partial residential.
It's a huge space that doesn't.
I
get
heard-
used.
I heard that they were gonna take that and start renting some space in there to newer companies that can't really afford a, like
Wow.
a traditional building, just to.
Funny you
get
said that
started.
because I saw on Facebook, there was a company that opened called Opulence.
Opulence,
And it
yeah.
was really expensive, like shoes,
Mhm.
handbags and things like that. I couldn't really figure it all out what it was about, but I live right there, so I would like to see it get back, that they all moved down in the valley to those strip malls, and one of those have already gone under. I don't like that kind of shopping,
I
that
don't either.
in and out, and there's been some crime down there too.
Mhm.
You're walking along and they come along and take your package, or they push people down and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, that'll kill those really quickly, the crime. That's what
Yeah.
knocked out a lot of our malls in the area.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Lexi, when are you due?
May 10th.
Oh.
2 more months of
On the home
chugging along.
stretch.
I know. I don't know how I'm gonna make it to 9 more weeks now. 9
Yeah,
more weeks. It
My
probably won't be 9, but
my daughter was born May 6th. That's a good time of the year to be
Right.
pregnant. Yeah, because
It
you're not like
is.
pregnant through the hot summer.
right, yeah. And I got just now I'm getting through my my tired stage. I was telling Lynn about this, but it's a lot better to have that during the winter time too, when it's
Yeah.
not no fun stuff going on all outside.
Yeah, when he's born, it'll be warm outside and she can go and take him on walks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Awesome.
ready to get him going.
Is he your first?
He is, yes.
Aw, congratulations.
You. They're exciting, but very exhausting.
Oh, yeah. It is. In
He's not even out yet, so.
the last few weeks, you'll be looking for somewhere that you can get comfortable to sleep.
Right, just crawl into
Yeah.
a corner.
Yeah, I just,
That's how I
I
feel.
would like sleep on the couch, like propped up against it, because it just was so uncomfortable to lay
I
anywhere.
can't get comfortable in the middle of the night, especially sleeping with 2 dogs in the bed.
Right.
And my pants. Like, I can't do it.
I can't imagine that. My dog sleeps
Yeah.
in our bed and she's like 12 pounds and she weighs like 150 pounds in the middle of the night when she's asleep.
They
'cause
do.
She will not move.
They really do.
Oh,
And
that's funny.
they're dead weight. You can't move them. And then your
Yeah.
arms are weak because you're tired.
Right.
I'm like, oh.
See what you missed out on, James? See what you missed out on?
Yeah, yeah. I've had like a flooded basement this week. You wouldn't believe this year, the amount of days we've had schools closed for snow. COVID, snow, more COVID, snow. It's been like 3 months of hell.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm
and
sorry.
then all my time taking these buyers around, and it's it's like banging your head against the wall. So
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Definitely been there.
yeah.
All right, you
been
guys,
there.
you have a good
Pretty much
week,
enough.
okay?
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.